Okay, good morning. What we're going to talk about is the pre-flight reports in pdfToolbox. So basically, when you do pre-flight, we should know that you have a chance of getting a report out of it. The report can be XML, it can be any kind of, what can be a PDF. And one of the options is a PDF that is created based on an HTML template. So the same engine that is used for place content, same engine that is inside of PDF chip can be used to create a pre-flight report. Now, one of the annoying things about pre-flight reports is that every time we say, look, you have some new stuff here, people say, oh, but we also wanted this option. Which is why you have HTML reports in the first place, because then you can adjust them. But there are some problems still with the report. As of today, the report that comes, the template that comes in pdfToolbox 10 even, is not very easy to modify. I've done a session last year, I think, on a new template that was that you can find on GitHub, by the way. If you don't know that, Callas has a GitHub page, github.com/Callas software, and you can find some pre-flight templates, pre-flight report templates on there. But still, there are a number of features that people ask for that are difficult to implement. And in some cases, it's because it's just not possible. There are some pieces missing in pdfToolbox itself that would make life much easier for everyone. So what we've done over the last couple of months is, on the one hand, implemented additional stuff in pdfToolbox that you can use in pre-flight report templates. And on the other hand, I and some other people have had fun making an updated report template so that you can see how to use these things and can use them as a starting point. So what you have, and like I said, I've done most of the coding, the development on this. Luckily, we also have someone at 4Ps now who has some understanding of what you have to do to make something look pretty, which is a quality I miss completely. So they also look, you can laugh, I know it's true, which means that not only do you have more functionality in there, but it actually also looks much nicer than what you would have gotten if I would have done it, because going beyond adding penguins is, well, difficult. So what you have is, and what I'll show here, you don't have it yet, but I'll get to that, is we made a generic pre-flight report template. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, you get just files in and you want to pre-flight them, can we come up with something that looks a little bit nicer and has some additional features? But in some workflows, you do know some things about the workflow itself and the files in the workflow, and that allows you to specialize the report a little bit. And we made two examples so far. One is a pre-flight report for things that are either single or double-sided. So if you know that you're going to get a file that either contains 1 page or 2 pages, for example, because you're dealing with business cards, then maybe there are some things that you'd like to do, like show both pages. If you know that all you're going to get is a single or a double-paged PDF file, then you want to report that either shows 1 preview or 2 previews, depending on the number of pages, and does it in a nice way. So we've created that. And then the third example that we've created so far is, in many workflows, you have special colors you kind of want to show to the client as well. And a good example is labels or stickers or whatever you want to call them, where, for example, you have a cut path that you want to show separately, or you have under color white, or you have a varnish, something where if you go back to the customer and you say, this is your file that I'm pre-flighting or that I pre-flighted, then this is what it looks like, and this is the special layer that is on there. So we've also created something that that implements that. Where are these things? Well, nowhere at the moment, except for on my Dropbox somewhere. The idea is that we will put these on GitHub together with the release of pdfToolbox 11. Yeah, so you will be able to download them there and use them from that point on, but they will not yet be included in pdfToolbox 11.0. So they are going to be embedded in the product, at least that is the plan, starting with pdfToolbox 11.1. The important thing is the functionality, the additional functionality that is used in them is already in the product, and even in the product that you have today. So you can just download them and use them and start modifying them and so on. But by default in the product, they will be added in 11.1. The good thing about that is that we're showing these reports now to you, and it gives you a chance to come back to us and say, oh, you've forgotten this or that, or wouldn't it be nice if, and that gives us a little bit of time to actually evaluate that and see if we can, if we need to add another report type, or if there is something we need to do differently in the report templates before they are included in 11.1. So if you come back and say, I don't like this, I will be very happy. If you come back and say, I like this, I will be very happy as well. So this additional support, what does that mean? Well, I don't know how much you've done with a Preflight report template, but if you look at a folder where you have an HTML template, there is one file in there that is called Manifest.xml. And in the Manifest.xml, you specify, this is your place where you can do communication with pdfToolbox. So you can specify there what it is you want pdfToolbox to generate because you want to use it inside of your template. Yeah. Why are these things not generated by default? Because they take time. If I ask pdfToolbox to generate an XML report, that's going to take time to write it. If I ask pdfToolbox to generate a preview image at 150 dpi and I tell it that I want that for all pages in the document, it's going to take time to generate those images. So the report generation gets slower. If you don't use these things in your report templates, there's no point in generating them in the first place. So in this manifest, if you're not using any of these special features, you can simply delete those lines that you see there under results, and then pdfToolbox is not going to spend the time to generate that stuff. What you already had in pdfToolbox 10 was an XML report generation. So while you're doing the pre-flight and generating this PDF report, you can ask pdfToolbox to also generate an XML report. Why? Well, in your template, you can then read the XML report and get information out of it. Yeah? And then the second line that you see there, this preview line, allowed you to specify that you also want preview images of the PDF that is being pre-flighted. So during the pre-flight phase, pdfToolbox generates, in this case, an image at 150 dpi of page 1. It puts it in a specific folder, and in your template, you can pick that up and use that in the generated PDF file. Yeah. And by default in pdfToolbox 10, this was for page 1, and then there were some additions in some point version of pdfToolbox, I don't know which one, where you could also have other pages. What you don't have is what you now can do in pdfToolbox 11. So this section in the Manifest.xml has been extended. And it has basically been extended with all of the support for the visualizer. Yeah? Now, what is the visualizer? You can see that in pdfToolbox Desktop, where you can see, you can go to, is it the View menu or the Tools? I think it's View, where you have the ability to see an in-coverage overview, for example. You get this image with on there indicated in yellow, orange, red, depending on how bad it is, how much ink is being used in the document. Or you can look at individual separations, or you could look at the CMY separations together. all of these things are generated by the visualizer, and support for the visualizer has been integrated into the Preflight engine. So if I specify that X visualizer item element in the in that Manifest.xml file, then I can now add XPart elements in there, and each of these XPart elements corresponds to a type of image generated by the visualizer. So in the example you have there, I don't know whether it's readable very well, but what you have there is ink_temp, which means ink coverage, and which view, the temperature view, which is this highlighting with yellow, orange, and red. And then the second thing I have in there is sep, which means generate images for all individual separations. On the visualizer element itself, I have some properties, and the properties are used to set options for the parts that are being generated. This very closely matches what you have in the, so let me just go there. It very closely reflects what you have in the CLI, for example. If I would run in the CLI the visualizer command, or at least a help for the visualizer command, then we have to, where's my mouse there? So we could look at this. This is the visualizer command, where you tell the visualizer which things it has to generate. And the things that you can specify in this Manifest.xml correspond to what you have here. So you also see that ink temp option, for example, and the other one I used was in the separation preview. You have the option to generate all individual separations. The properties of that X visualizer element can also be found here. So for example, there is one that is called here sep colors, which means if you generate individual separations, normally they would be generated in black. So you would get what the sign plate looks like, but it would be colored in black. If you set sep colors to on, then it will generate each separation in the color of that separation. So I get the sign plate, and it will be rendered in sign. So if we go back to this presentation for just a second, and I show you again what we have here, that is exactly, can I zoom in? Yes, I can. It's exactly what happened. I have separation as what needs to be generated, and then somewhere it says sep colors equals 1. Yeah, so I want them in their own colors. So the options and the parts that you can specify for the visualizer can all be created by the Preflight engine. The Preflight engine will put those images somewhere, and then you can pick them up and use them in your template. So let me go to, I feel like every year I give presentations here, I have a different editor where I say, oh, this is really cool. So this year it's Visual Studio Code. Last year it was Sublime, I think. If someone has an editor for next year, I'm open for suggestions. What I've done here, and this is maybe also kind of interesting to share the workflow and not just the report itself. The developing a report template is a real pain because, I mean, the way I used to do it was you use desktop, right? So you have a file, you run a Preflight, you generate a report, and then it's not what you want, so you modify the template and you do it all again. That's kind of very, very tiring. The way I've set this up here is in Visual Studio Code, you can have a folder with all of the templates you're working on, and you can see the templates here. The last 3 are the ones that I'm going to focus on. So these just contain the template by itself. Yeah, you have the manifest and the HTML file and so on. But Visual Studio Code integrates a terminal window as well. Yeah. So what I have done for my testing here is I've written a very small shell script for each of the test cases I have, where basically I run pdfToolbox. and I ask for a template, and then you can specify what the template is and what options you want to use and where you want the output and so on. And generating 1,500 files because your testing is annoying, so I clean up what I've generated the last time before. And so if you spend a little time on setting up a nice workflow for that, the testing becomes a lot easier, because what I can do now is say, well, what I'm interested in is seeing what the result is for this first report. And I've basically created, like I said, I have these shell scripts. So all I have to do is choose the one that I want and run it. And it will be run directly in Visual Studio Code. And it will open it in my preferred PDF viewer, which is preview for this. There. And if I want to change something, all I do is edit the template and run it again. And that makes for a very quick test cycle. So this is the report that is generated. And I'm going to generate a second one here as well, so I can show you the difference. If I would do this with a desktop, I would be at minute number 10 by now. So, and what we can do is hide this for a second, and I now have the two reports. Yeah, so the different types of reports or the different templates have a little bit of a different view to them, just because we wanted to give you different options. But what you can already see is that we have some provision in here that if the file is landscape, something else happens than when the file is portrait. This is the same report. We just look at the form factor of the file that is being pre-flighted, and then either we put additional information to the right if it's a portrait file, or we move the information to the bottom if it's a landscape file, to kind of well, give you the most out of this A4 that you're generating this report on. And then you have all the classic stuff like the pre-flight information in both cases, and you have a section with more information, which you also have in today's reports. And then we added a section where you see all the colors in there. Now the reports are generated, the templates are generated in such a way that you can switch things on and off relatively easily. So there is a JavaScript file with preferences where you can say, I want this or I don't want this. And basically this gives you a preview of each separation. We've made it pretty small, so it's like a little bullet, but it comes in the color of the actual separation. If you had spot colors, you would have a separation for, or a bullet for each spot color. And then it also shows you the coverage information for that color by default as well. And then, of course, what is interesting is that I get an additional page in this case with in-coverage information. Yeah? And it's a very warm penguin, as you can see. And what we've also done is we've added images for all separations. So in this case, we've chosen to add 2 images per row, if you want. And then you'll have as many rows as necessary to show all the different separations that you have in the input file. Yeah? So this is dynamic. What is generated here is we just asked pdfToolbox to generate images for all individual separations, to color them with the color of that separation, which means we don't know how many images we're going to get ahead of time. We just generate, we take these individual images and we put them in the PDF, and they are going to flow and maybe generate 2 pages or 3 pages if you have lots of different separations in this particular file. The title that you have here, and this is a little bit of a limitation in pdfToolbox at the moment, I'm afraid, is in capitals, not because we like that, but because that's the way the separation images are generated. And there is not really a way to easily get, you could probably try to fake it by cross-referencing what we get somewhere else and here, but at the moment, the images are generated in capitals for separation, so that's what we're using here as well. The look and feel, of course, is again totally under your control. What we've done here is we just put the image itself, and then you have a title for that that appears at the top. We didn't try to add any kind of border or a more elaborate title element or anything like that. You could choose to do that, and it might make sense to have a little border around it that shows where the image stops, or maybe you want some background color so that you can see where the page stops and so on. We haven't done any of that, but that is completely flexible. So, what does the template look like? It's actually not that incredibly difficult what happens here. So you have this manifest XML, and in the manifest, this one looks exactly the way the one in my presentation looked like. I have a visualizer element. I have the limit for the in coverage that I want to generate. And this is, in a way, another limitation that you have. You have to specify what the in coverage limit is, and you specify that in the Manifest.xml, which means you can't really do it on the fly based on a variable that comes in, for example. Yeah. So unless you would generate a Manifest.xml on the fly as well, and you would put it in the report template. So you have the in coverage limits. Then I have those are used when you're using the small images visualizer view, and you have some other parameters here. The most important one in my case in this template is sep colors, which is set to 1, and then resolution, which is set to 150. And what we've also done is we've limited the amount of pages to 1. And this is a difficult one, but in this template, we don't know what comes in, and I don't want to start generating separation images for a 150-page document. So I've limited it to 1. Yeah, so those are specified in the manifest, and what happens in that case is, and can I show it here, or do we have to go somewhere else? I think I cannot show it here. Maybe we're lucky. We'll see. So what happens is, yes, but this is only the page image that is being generated. So let me do something else. Okay. Where? Okay, this is the output folder that I use for these things. Where's my zoom? Here. And I haven't generated it for this report, but I will use this one. And let's look at the, actually I can probably already show you if we look at the image folder. So if you ask pdfToolbox to generate images, either preview images or visualizer images, it will generate that in the image folder of your template. There will be a folder that is called pages, and then a folder per resolution that you've requested, and then you have, for each page in this case, you have the images that are being generated. Yeah. So the only image you could get in pdfToolbox 10 would have been this one, which is the preview of that particular page. But if you're using this visualizer feature in pdfToolbox 11, you will get a list of additional images. Now, you don't have to go look for them in this particular folder. What you would do is you would look at the JSON file that is generated by pdfToolbox. And in that JSON file, if I am able to make my trackpad work there, in the JSON file for each page, so for each page you have a link to where the preview image for that page lives. And you now also have links to the visualizer images. And kind of another limitation in pdfToolbox is that it doesn't really tell you what these are. It just puts them in there, and you have to figure it out. So you have to do a little planning of in which order you ask for images, because if you don't know how many images you expect, it's hard to predict what is what. So in this case, what I've asked for is the in coverage image first. I know that's always going to be the first one, number 0 for developers. And then the rest is going to be individual separations. Yeah. So, and I don't know how many there are because I can't predict how many separations I have in this file, but because I know that's the only stuff I've asked for, I can figure it out. Yeah. So the way you would work with this is you would say, I'm going to look at this this JSON file, which you do to get other pre-flight information in your template anyway. And in that JSON file, I'm going to look for this this array with visualizer images, and then I'm going to do something with the images that are in there. So in the template we have here, there is a little bit of JavaScript that looks up, for example, all separation images, and for each separation image, it creates a div element, it puts the image in there, it links it to the image that was generated by pdfToolbox, and then there is all kinds of cool CSS code around it to make it appear in nice rows and columns on that additional page. How you implement that in the design is totally your choice. Just know that you have to put it in the Manifest.xml and then pick it up using some JavaScript from this JSON file. And this is flexible or dynamic. So for example, in this case, apparently I'm only asking for the images for page number 1. I'm not asking for the same images for page number 2, but that depends on how you configure those elements and so on. Make sense so far? Questions? Anybody understand what I'm talking about? Okay, good. Just checking. So what I showed was the number 5. It sounds like a Chinese menu. The number 5 pre-flight report, and that's a generic one. So we don't really know what we're pre-flighting. We're just pre-flighting PDF. We don't know how many pages. We don't have any special knowledge. What we've then done is say, well, let's assume we're working with business cards, but it also works for large format. It works for a lot of other things. But this is a workflow where the assumption is you're going to get a file with 1 page or 2 pages, and you want to make it a little bit nicer for people. And I can show you what's going to happen in that case. So we'll run number 3. And what you get in this particular instance is this. Now, there are a few things that are different, and I will come back to that in a second. I'm also going to run number 4. And then we'll do the same thing and compare these two. Yeah. Okay. So you can go, and I want preview again. There we go. So the first thing to notice here is that throughout this template, things change in terms of color. So what we've done here is we've said, well, if there is an error during the pre-flight, then we want to use one particular color, and we might want to change this, well, the red that we generate and the green that we generate, because it's kind of aggressive right now. But anyway, if you have an error, then you get, in this case, red. If you get a successful file, so no pre-flight errors at all, then you get a different type of report. And the idea was to make it very visually distinctive whether a file was pre-flighted successfully or not. Yeah. And this has been done for the background elements, it's for the titles, it's for these little icons that you see, which I can tell you in CSS is really nice to try and do. yeah, the bullets that you see here. So anything that has a particular accent color is different in these two reports. Yeah. Second thing that you can see is that, well, if I have 2 pages in my input document, what we generate is a preview image for both pages. Because that kind of makes sense. If you're pre-flighting business cards, there's no real reason why you would like to see only a preview of the first page and not of the second page. Another very common request was to indicate the size of the document that is being pre-flighted in some way. And we've always done that by mentioning the trim size just in the text, but it is, of course, much nicer to see that indicated in combination with the preview images that you get. So that's something that is in here as well. And then we've, on top of that, implemented the in coverage and the individual separations again. Yeah. What happens if you only have 1 page in the file? Well, in that case, you only get 1 preview image. So basically the second image that was there and that arrow for the second page is just hidden in this particular case. This looks very similar in the templates. The only thing we have done that is a little bit different perhaps is that well, where it says preview images, instead of saying page 1, I'm now explicitly saying first page and last page, which means that if you have a 2-page document, you get preview images for both pages. If you have a 1-page document, it's only going to generate a preview for the first page, and it's going to ignore your stupid question for the second page that doesn't exist, which is exactly what you want in this particular case. Yeah. Is this more complex in the template? Well, the only complexity that you add by doing this is that you have to check the number of pages, which is something callas tells you anyway in this JSON file. And depending on whether it's 1 page or 2 pages, you have to hide part of the HTML that you're using. And this, if you would go look at the scripting that is in here, that is done in there. Yeah. Yes, it does. As far as I remember, it does. But the disadvantage, of course, is of here saying -1 is that if you have a 1,000-page document, it will generate images for 1,000 pages, which might not be what you want. So that's for the business card case. And then we've done one last template at the moment where we've assumed that there is some kind of special color that you want to show. And the way that is done, and I think this is number 5, if I generate that one, yeah, so in this case, this is an example of a label. And in the label, there is a special color, and we've just used the cut line for this. So if I would look at the color information section, it now gives me cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and then it gives me something that is called cut. That's the separation for the cut line. And in the setup of my template, I've done something really similar. I have 2 preview images, but in this case, it is the CMYK version, or not the CMYK version, the original image, so the total file image for on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, instead of showing page 2, I show a particular separation. The only challenge here, and again, this is kind of a limitation of how this works in pdfToolbox, is, well, what I could do is I could ask for a particular separation. So if we go back to here where we looked at the visualizer options and we scroll down, then you'll see that What we did before was use the sep option, and that gives me one image for each separation in the file. Yeah, I can also use sep name, so I could have sep : and then cut, and that would give me only the separation preview image for the separation called cut. The disadvantage of doing that is that if I create a Preflight template, because I would specify that in the Manifest.xml, I would need to create a different template if I want to show the cut line versus showing, for example, white in the file or a varnish, because I would ask in that visualizer element in the manifest, I would specifically ask for that separation. Now, that's, of course, I didn't think that was very much fun to do. So I didn't do that. What I do instead in this template is, and there is a little bit of, again, due to how it's implemented, there is a little bit of guesswork involved here, but what's life without a little guesswork? So what I do in the manifest is I just use sep. I still ask for all the separation images. Yeah. So how does it know that it has to display only the cut line there? Well, you could, of course, assume that there is only going to be one spot color and then show that one. That's no fun. So if I show you the script for that particular one, I added a variable in there. So I pass a variable with the name of the separation that I want to single out. Yeah. And now it becomes much more interesting because now I have a Preflight report that can be used for a profile, and I just have to specify a variable. And depending on what I set the variable to, it's going to generate something else. So just to prove to you that I'm not lying completely, if I would change this to cyan, and I would run this again, then I get the cyan separation instead. Yeah. Where's the guesswork involved? Well, I'm asking for all separation images. And so that means that pdfToolbox is going to generate this array with one image for each separation, and then it gives them these really awkward names where things are capitalized and stuff. Yeah. In this variable, I tell pdfToolbox, or I tell my template, which separation it has to pick up, and I have to match these two. So there is a little bit of code that says, this is what I got passed as separation. Now loop over all the images that were generated and try to guess which of those separations it was. And in theory, that could cause problems because you can do all kinds of funky names with separation names, but in most cases, it will not be an issue. And the big advantage, of course, is that I can now modify what the template does from the outside. I don't have to create individual templates. I don't have to come up with something stupid like writing an XML, like a manifest XML on the fly and stuff like that. You can just deal with it with variables. Yeah, you could do the same thing as we did before. The only thing, again, because of the way callas does this, Ulrich, the only thing you have is the name of the image. Yeah, but you know what the format of the name is. So you know it's going to be, if I remember correctly, it's calls _ viz _ sep _, and then there is in capitals the name of the separation. Yeah, so you could pick up that thing and then show it there, or in this case we have a variable that comes in, so you could use the variable and then simply show that together with here. What we do now already is we generate, we look at what the size of the file is and we put that in this text element here. It would be relatively simple to say, let's add an additional label here somewhere where we also show what separation you're looking at. Maybe at the bottom you add text elements that that states that this is the preview and that this is the cyan layer in this particular case. It would be relatively simple. It would even be simple in the template because I gave up, and I tried to do it with a whole bunch of divs to begin with, and divs have been invented by Satan for this kind of stuff. So what you have in here is a nice table, so you can just add another row and put your stuff in there, and all of the alignment stuff and so on is much more easy all of a sudden. Yeah, so you would have to add some additional elements in the HTML to show that, and then in the there is a little script file that comes with this. I was not going to show the scripting, but you're kind of forcing my hand now. So in the script file, there is a little script that looks for images and does the updating and so on and so on. So you would just have to add some code there to also update the labels with what you get from the outside. But that would be almost trivial to do. So if there are no questions, then I'm done exactly on the right second.